Welcome back, and let's continue with our numbers. So before the ad break, we were busy with square numbers. Now we are going to go into cube numbers of integers. If I have 4 cubed, we know that that means 4 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 4. And that is going to give us an answer of 64. What about if I am given a negative number that is cubed? So again, that is still a negative 4 multiplied by a negative 4 multiplied by a negative 4. And the answer there is going to be a negative 64. If I have a 5 cubed, that is 5 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 5. And the answer there is 125. If I have a negative 5 that is cubed, that is a negative 5 multiplied by a negative 5 multiplied by a negative 5. So why does the answer become negative here? It is because we multiplied 2 negative numbers first. And do you remember that 2 negative numbers give us a positive answer? And from that positive answer, when we multiply by a negative answer, that gives us a negative. So cube numbers can either be positive or negative, as we can see from our examples. We are multiplying 3 numbers here. So we multiply the first 2. Like I said, it's a negative multiplied by a negative. We know that the answer is going to give us a positive. But we still have to include that third negative number there. And when we do include it there, it's going to be a positive number multiplied by a negative number, of which we know that the answer is going to be negative. When we are looking at our cube roots, let's look at the cube root of 27. That is just the cube root of 3 cubed, and our answer there is a positive 3. But if we're looking at a negative 27, that is going to be the cube root of a negative 3. And then we know that negative 27 comes from a negative 3 cubed. That means our answer is going to be a negative 3. If I have the cube root of 125, that is the cube root of 5 cubed. And our answer there is a positive 5. But when we are looking at the negative 125, that is the cube root of a negative 5 cubed. And our answer there is going to be a negative 5. So this means that positive cube numbers have positive cube roots, and negative cube numbers have negative cube roots, as we can see from our examples. Let's move on to the second part of our lesson, and the last part of our lesson actually. So we are going to be looking at the properties of integers. The first thing that we are going to be looking at is the multiplicative inverses. The multiplicative inverse applies to multiplication and division. It refers to the number that must be multiplied or divided to another number to get a positive 1. We get 1 if we multiply with a number's reciprocal. That is, its upside down version. Let's see some example here. So the multiplicative inverse of a positive 3 divided by 4, or 3/4, is 4/3. So 3/4 and 4/3 are multiplicative inverses of each other. Why? It's because if we multiply them, then the answer is going to be 1. So 3/4 multiplied by 4/3, that gives us a 1. To get a positive 1, the signs must be the same. So when we are talking about a reciprocal, it means that if the one number is positive, the other one also needs to be positive. So positive 3/4 will be multiplied by its reciprocal, that is a positive 4/3. Another example, the multiplicative inverse of a negative 1/2, or 1/2. So a negative 1/2, for us, we need to find a number that we are going to multiply there so that the answer is going to be 1. And that number is a negative 2/1, or 2 wholes. And if we multiply those two, the answer is going to be a positive 1. What about the multiplicative inverse of a positive 5/8? That is 5 divided by 8. And again, we are looking for a number that is of the same sign. And when we multiply it, it is going to give us 1. And that number there is 8/5 because the reciprocal of 5/8 is 8. And that number there is 8/5 because 5/8 multiplied by 8/5 is equals to 1. So again, to get a positive 1, the signs must be the same. So remember with that example, the negative 1/2 will be multiplied by its reciprocal, and that is a negative 2 ones, right? So we need to make sure that the signs are the same and we are using its reciprocal. Let's move on to the commutative property of multiplication. So we have 3 multiplied by 5. Of course, this is the same as 5 multiplied by 3 because multiplication is commutative. Now, 3 multiplied by 5 or 5 multiplied by 3 is 15. Then we have the next one there, a negative 3 multiplied by 5. So this is the same as 5 multiplied by a negative 3. And of course, our answer there is a negative 15 because we are multiplying a positive number with a negative number. So our answer is negative. If we have a positive number multiplied with a negative number, if you remember, we said that the answer is going to be negative. So a positive 3 multiplied by a negative 5 is a negative 15. Then we have a negative number multiplied with a negative number. So 2 negative numbers. That is a negative 3 multiplied by a negative 5. We said that the answer would be a positive. So our answer there is a positive 15. What about the associative property of multiplication? Remember, we can choose numbers to associate with. So if I am going to associate perhaps the 6 with the 2, that is going to be 6 multiplied by 2 is 12. And we still have the negative 7 to multiply with. And if I multiply now a positive number with a negative number, my answer is going to be negative. And when I say 12 multiplied by 7, that answer is going to be 84. So 6 multiplied by 2 multiplied by a negative 7, our answer is a negative 84. And remember, with associative, we can choose to associate different numbers together, meaning I could have associated the positive 2 with the negative 7. Again, I have a positive 6 multiplied by a negative 2, and I multiply that with a negative 7. And if I associate perhaps the negative 2 with the negative 7, that will leave me with 6 multiplied by. Now, in those brackets that I've just added there for myself, we are multiplying 2 negative numbers. Remember, the answer is going to be positive, and 2 multiplied by 7 is 14. And now I am multiplying a positive number with a positive number. My answer is going to be a positive 84. What about the distributive properties of integers? So remember, we can distribute. That means I can say 3 multiplied by 3, which is 9. And I'm going to add that to 3 multiplied by a negative 5. Now 3 multiplied by negative 5 gives us a negative 15. And if we remember from adding and subtracting our integers, if I am adding a positive number with a negative number, the answer is going to take the sign of the one that is furthest away from the 0 on our number line, and that is the negative 15. So that means my answer is going to be negative, and if I now just subtract the natural numbers, then I am going to get an answer of 6. This means that my answer is a negative 6. And then when we're looking at the last one there, I have a negative 7, and in brackets I have 3 minus 2. So if I distribute that, that is a negative 7 multiplied by a positive 3. Our answer there is a negative 21. and I am going to subtract this. And when I minus, what am I subtracting? It's a negative 7 multiplied by a positive 2. And that answer is going to be a negative 14. Again, we are now subtracting two negative numbers, and then our answer there is going to be a negative 7. So, I hope you enjoyed our lesson for today. I hope you learned a lot in today's lesson and you got all the answers correctly. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.